Hi, today I want to talk to you a little bit about the herb Guduchi. And I'm going to be referring primarily to one of my favorite classical texts on Ayurvedic herbal medicine called Bhavaprakasha or Bhavaprakasha. And Bhavaprakasha offers some pithy points on each of the really traditional classical Ayurvedic herbal medicines. And I'm going to tease through some of those points and talk about them. Before I get into the properties and indications of Guduchi, I'd like to share with you a little bit of a short story from the Ramayana. It's a story that finds its roots in the Ramayana, and when Hanuman and Ram were in battle with the demon king Ravana in an effort to free Rama's wife Sita from the clutches of the demon king in Lanka. There was a fierce battle, and when the battle concluded and Ravana lay dead on the battlefield, Indra, the god Indra, was so pleased that he rained nectar down on the dead soldiers in Hanuman's army to revive them and bring them back to life. And wherever the Amrita was seen to hit the ground, Guduchi sprouted up. And hence one of the names of Guduchi is Amrita. And this Amrita speaks to the reviving and vitalizing energy of this wonderful herb Guduchi. So when Bhavaprakasha talks about Guduchi, first he lays out the rasa, virya, and vipaka of this herb. And when I first originally wrote about Guduchi, I spoke about Guduchi being, in my book Ayurvedic Herbology East and West, I referred to Guduchi and classified it as having a cooling virya, or a cooling energy or action. And since then, I've actually reverted back to the classical texts on this, and now classify it as Ushna, or heating virya, heating energy. It was a difficult decision for me because I as an herbalist, I really relate with Guduchi as having a cooling effect on the body, as is traditionally taught in Ayurveda, that Guduchi pacifies Pitta dosha, and brings down that biothermal energy and heat in the body, and it's used for a myriad of Pitta conditions. So I thought it's illogical to consider it heating, and I just refused to write about it in my book as heating. In fact, I was taught about it being cooling in several ways, but traditionally it is taught as being Ushna, or heating virya. So I asked myself why and contemplated it in relation to how I use it. And logically, it makes sense on a particular point, and that is Agni, the digestive fire and the metabolic spark or fire within each tissue of the body. Guduchi has a remarkable ability to be able to regulate and restore Agni, or digestive fire, in the system. And it does so in a way that helps to promote what we call amapachana, or a burning of ama, or metabolic waste products. And that burning of ama happens from another property of Guduchi, which is Agni Dipana. And Agni Dipana means to kindle the digestive fire, to light the flame of that digestive fire, so we can thereby burn up those metabolic waste products and actually help to eliminate them from the system. So Guduchi has an ability to be able to kindle the digestive fire, burn ama, without aggravating Pitta dosha, without stimulating that Pitta and creating excessive heat in the system. Okay, so that's one of the primary ways that we can look at Guduchi having that Ushna virya. Now, there are bitter substances in formulations like Kutki or Mahasudarshan Churna that can in a sense, mitigate ama or toxins and disperse them and clear them from the system and cleanse them out. Okay? But here, Guduchi is considered to have a more stimulating effect on the Agni. Now, conversely, there are herbs like Amalaki that have a cooling virya, but yet still have an ability to kindle Agni. And this is a fascinating point about Amalaki, is it's used to treat what we call Amalapitta, meaning sour stomach, which can also relate to GERD. And GERD has its roots in Manda Agni, or a slow digestive fire. And here, the sourness of Amalaki can help kindle that digestive energy, but not provoke Pitta dosha. And even though Manda Agni, or slow fire, is more kaphagenic in nature, causing GERD, the effects of GERD, acid hitting the esophagus, is very Pitta. And so here, Amalaki helps to restore the Agni without aggravating Pitta, treating the root cause of GERD. And Guduchi is a nice component to treatment for this condition. Bhavaprakasha talks about Guduchi having several unique actions. One of them is Rasayana. And Rasayana is, I believe, is related, the property of Rasayana relates to Guduchi, specifically when it comes to Dhatu Agni. Dhatu Agni is a Sanskrit term in Ayurveda that denotes the metabolic spark within each tissue of the body, each of the major tissues of the body. In Ayurveda, we call it Sapta Dhatu, or 7 tissues. They all have a fire within them, that metabolic spark that helps in the transformation of that tissue from a more unstable to stable, ripened phase. And so here, Guduchi helps to kindle that Agni at that Dhatu level, ensuring good, healthy nourishment of the tissues. Hence, we get a Rasayanic energy and a building of the tissues. So when someone's doing a cleansing and rejuvenation program and they still may have metabolic waste products stirred up in the system, they've completed their cleansing process, but yet the body's still trying to rid itself of whatever's been kind of mobilized into the general circulation or the GI tract, Guduchi is a great way to help still support that Agni, help to rid that waste product, and thereby get good tissue nourishment, especially along with other more nutritive Rasayana herbs. I know we're talking in-depth Ayurvedic concepts here, and this may not be applicable to the lay herbalist, but may be fascinating for an herbalist in general or an Ayurvedic practitioner or doctor. So another property that relates specifically to Guduchi is its ability to absorb excess water from the system. Here, Bhavaprakasha says water absorbent, or causing constipation in parentheses. This is the translation. But what it does not cause constipation. What it really does is helps to absorb that water. That water element that goes to the general, to the large intestine. One of the functions of the small intestine, I'm sorry. What I mean is the large intestine. One of the processes that happens within the large intestine is that it absorbs the liquid from stool and creates form stool. And that form stool helps to provide bulk, which thereby stimulates that mass peristalsis and elimination. And here, if there's too much liquidity of Pitta dosha in the system, both fire and water element, it can create a looseness of stool, that murdu koshta, or Pitta grahani, specifically in its the name of that condition. And here, Guduchi helps to treat that Pitta grahani, along with other more astringent herbs. There are other astringents that can be added to that to help to support. But if someone has that tendency for loose stool, Guduchi can be very helpful. Another aspect of, another property of, from Bhavaprakasha that I haven't talked about yet is the curing of excessive heat in the body. Here, Bhavaprakasha says cures thirst, burning sensations, and then diabetes comes after that. And I think these three are good to talk about together. Thirst, and also I would add increased appetite, or tikshna agni. The burning sensations that can be generalized, or it can be in the stomach. Okay, so in the stomach, or general burning of the skin. So it can treat skin conditions, it can treat inflammatory gut conditions. It can create increased thirst, which is a sign also of type 2 diabetes mellitus. And a side note is that Guduchi is one of the primary herbs used in the treatment of diabetes, specifically type 2 diabetes mellitus, but also other forms of diabetes. Another aspect here, it says coughs. Okay, so cough can refer to phlegm. Phlegm can refer to either seasonal allergies. Phlegm can refer to colds, common cold and upper respiratory viruses. Here, Guduchi is a good immunomodulating herb. It's a good herb to use to support general immunity, just prophylactically, but it also can be used in the treatment of Jwara fever or others to help to support the body in acute illness. Jaundice, leprosy, and skin conditions. So here we see Rakta, which is blood, and Rakta Vahashrota, the channel of blood. The Guduchi is a primary herb for treating increased pitta in the Rakta Dhatu, in the blood tissue, and for a variety of inflammatory skin diseases, as well as autoimmune skin diseases like eczema and psoriasis. It's effective in the treatment of gout and is the primary herb or the leading herb in Kaishor Gugulu. Kaishor is another name for Guduchi. And here he says fevers, we've spoken about that, heat in general, pitta conditions, worms, vomiting. So it's not my primary antihelminthic herb or antiparasitic herb, but it can be used alongside them, especially when there's diarrhea involved. Nausea and vomiting, nausea is one of the cardinal signs of high pitta. And when that's present, especially in inflammatory type gut conditions, whether it's food poisoning, gastritis caused by acute food poisoning, or just generalized nausea, whether it's gallbladder, whether it's liver, Guduchi might be an herb to consider based on your overall observation. He speaks about dysuria, so any kinds of difficult urination or urinary conditions. I find it to be a supportive herb when there's interstitial cystitis. Speaking about interstitial cystitis or lower pelvic inflammation in general, Guwel Sattva, which is the starchy extract of Guduchi, is quite helpful. That's a whole other conversation, but since I've mentioned Guwel Sattva, I think it's important to say that Guwel Sattva, the starchy extract of Guduchi, has a more cold action. It's classified as Shitavirya, or cold action. Shitavirya is wonderful. Guwel Sattva is wonderful for any kinds of conditions that you want to cool down right away. Whereas Guduchi has more of a slow, sustained action. Bhavaprakasha speaks about heart disease. It's not one of my first choices, but yet it commonly finds its way into formulas that I use for hypertension specifically when there's pitta involvement. And when I feel like the qualities, both quantitative and qualitative qualities of pitta are in some way tied into the, involved in the scuffle when it comes to the imbalances that can cause hypertension. hypertension is another topic in and of itself. I think that kind of speaks to the primary, some of the primary points that Bhavaprakasha points out. In my book, Ayurvedic Herbology East and West, I get more specific with the uses of Guduchi, so feel free to check out my book, and I look forward to seeing you again on my channel soon.